Hey everyone, Elizabeth here. The Last Laugh delivers stories that leave you speechless. If you're here for it, hit subscribe and let's go. My name is Emma Torres, I'm 31 years old, and I'm a social worker from Boston. I spend my days helping families navigate the foster care system, filing paperwork, attending court hearings, and making sure kids end up in safe homes. It's exhausting work, but it matters. Nothing about my life is dramatic. I don't carry secrets or work for the government. I'm just someone who tries to help people. That's why what happened on the Amtrak Northeast Regional from Boston to Washington, D.C. made no sense at all. Before we go further, make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. It was a Thursday morning in late September, and I was headed to D.C. for a 3-day conference on child welfare reform. I'd booked my ticket 2 weeks earlier, coach class, car 5, seat 12B. Window seat. The train departed South Station at 8:15 a.m. I grabbed my usual coffee from the station cafe, loaded my carry-on with my laptop and conference materials, and found my seat with 10 minutes to spare. The car was about half full, business travelers typing on laptops, students with headphones, an elderly couple sharing a crossword puzzle. Normal. Completely normal. At 8:14, the conductor came through to check tickets. He was maybe 50 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His name tag read Thomas. I handed him my phone with my digital ticket displayed. He scanned it, nodded, and moved to the next passenger. The train pulled out of the station right on time. I settled in with my coffee, watching Boston's suburbs blur past the window. I had 3.5 hours until we reached D.C., plenty of time to review my notes for tomorrow's panel discussion. At 8:47, Thomas came back through the car. He was moving quickly, checking something on a handheld device. When he reached my row, he stopped. "Miss Torres?" I looked up. "Yes? I need to move you to a different seat." "What? Why?" "We have a situation with the heating system in this car. You'll be more comfortable in car 2. I glanced around. No one else looked uncomfortable. The temperature seemed fine to me. "I'm okay here, actually. I like this seat." Thomas leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Move to car 2. Right now." There was something in his tone, an urgency that didn't match the casual explanation about heating. I felt my stomach tighten. "I don't understand." He grabbed my arm, not roughly, but firmly. His eyes locked onto mine. "Your life depends on it." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Get your things. Walk forward to car 2. Don't make a scene. Go now." My hands were shaking as I shoved my laptop into my bag. Thomas was already moving away, stopping at 2 other seats in the car. I heard him tell a young woman with a baby to move to car 3. He whispered something to a businessman, who immediately stood and gathered his briefcase. Something was very, very wrong. I stepped into the aisle with my carry-on and walked toward the front of the car. My heart was pounding. Behind me, I heard the mother with the baby asking questions. Thomas's voice was low but insistent. I pushed through the door between cars, the floor rattling beneath my feet as the train sped through the Massachusetts countryside. Car 4. Car 3. Car 2. First class. The seats were wider, with more legroom. Only about 8 passengers in the entire car. A conductor I didn't recognize looked up as I entered. "Miss Torres," she said. "Seat 4A. Make yourself comfortable." How did she know my name? I sat down in the plush first-class seat, my mind racing. Through the window, I watched trees and telephone poles flash by. The train was going fast, maybe 70 miles per hour. I pulled out my phone. No service. We were in a dead zone between towns. 10 minutes passed. 15. I kept looking back toward the rear of the train, but I couldn't see into car 5 from here. At 9:02, Thomas appeared in car 2. He walked straight to me. "You did the right thing," he said quietly, sliding into the seat across the aisle. "What's happening? Why did you move me?" He glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "How much do you know about the Kellerman case?" My blood froze. "What? The Kellerman case? The foster care investigation. How much do you know?" Marcus Kellerman. The name hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd been assigned to his case 6 months ago. He was a 14-year-old boy who'd been removed from his mother's custody due to neglect. I'd placed him with what seemed like a perfect foster family, the Dawsons. Professional, loving, experienced. 3 months later, Marcus ran away. When police found him, he told a horrifying story. The Dawsons weren't running a foster home. They were running a trafficking operation, using foster children as cover for something much darker. I'd reported everything immediately. The police investigated. The Dawsons were arrested. But the case had gotten complicated. There were allegations that the operation went beyond just one family, that there was a network of people involved, including social workers, judges, and law enforcement. I'd been interviewed by state investigators 4 times. I'd turned over all my files. Then, 2 weeks ago, I'd been told the investigation was ongoing and I shouldn't discuss it with anyone. How do you know about Kellerman? I whispered. Thomas pulled out a wallet and flipped it open. A federal badge. U.S. Marshal Service. I'm Deputy U.S. Marshal Thomas Brennan. I've been undercover on this route for 3 weeks, waiting for this exact situation. What situation? There are 2 men in car 5. They boarded in Boston with fake tickets. They were seated 3 rows behind you. He pulled out his phone and showed me a surveillance photo, 2 men in dark jackets, both with hard, cold faces. Do you recognize them? I stared at the photo. No. They work for an organization that's been cleaning up loose ends in the Kellerman investigation. 3 witnesses have disappeared in the last month. We believe they were planning to make their move once the train reached a rural section between here and Providence. My mouth went dry. Make their move? They were going to kill you, Miss Torres. Make it look like an accident. A fall between cars, maybe. Or a medical emergency. Something that wouldn't raise immediate suspicion. I couldn't breathe. I'm just a social worker. I filed a report. That's all I did. You filed a report that connected 6 foster families to a child trafficking network worth millions of dollars. You identified pattern violations that investigators had missed for years. Your testimony is critical to bringing down the entire operation. Why didn't anyone tell me I was in danger? We didn't know until yesterday. One of the men in custody started talking. He gave us names, including yours. We flagged your travel plans and got me on this train. The train swayed as we rounded a curve. Through the window, I could see we were entering a more wooded area. Fewer houses. Longer stretches of forest. What happens now? I asked. We're stopping in Providence in 12 minutes. Federal agents will board and take the 2 men into custody. You'll be transferred to protective custody until we can secure the rest of the network. Protective custody? For how long? As long as it takes. I put my head in my hands. This couldn't be happening. I'd filed a report. That's what social workers do. We report abuse. We protect children. Miss Torres, Thomas said gently. You saved Marcus Kellerman's life. And probably dozens of other children. These people will do anything to protect their operation. But we're going to stop them. At 9:13, the train began to slow. Thomas stood and moved toward the front of the car. The female conductor I'd seen earlier was speaking into a radio. Through the window, I could see the Providence station approaching. The train eased into the platform and stopped with a gentle hiss of brakes. Immediately, the doors opened. But instead of passengers boarding, I saw 8 people in tactical gear with U.S. Marshal printed on their vests flood onto the train. They moved past car 2, heading toward the rear cars. Thomas was at the front door, coordinating with his team via radio. I heard bits and pieces, both targets confirmed, seats 15C and 15D, no resistance expected. 2 minutes later, Thomas returned. They're in custody. But we have a problem. What problem? We found a device in car 5. Under your original seat. My stomach dropped. What kind of device? Looks like a small explosive with a cell phone trigger. Remote detonation. It wasn't armed yet, but... He trailed off. I felt dizzy. They were going to blow up the train. Not the whole train. Just your seat. Make it look like a malfunction. A gas line, maybe. Or faulty wiring. You'd be dead, and it would take weeks to investigate. By then, the network would have cleaned up any remaining evidence. I couldn't process it. These people had planned to kill me, and probably other innocent passengers, just to protect their operation. Come on, Thomas said. We need to get you off this train. He led me off the train and through Providence Station to a parking garage, where 2 black SUVs waited. 4 federal agents surrounded me, 2 men, 2 women, all armed. We're taking you to a secure location, one of the women said. She was tall and professional looking, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun. I'm Special Agent Lisa Kwan, FBI. You're safe now. The SUV ride was silent. I stared out the window as we drove through Providence, then onto a highway heading south. After 40 minutes, we pulled into what looked like an ordinary office building. But inside, it was anything but ordinary. Security checkpoints. ID scanners. Armed guards. They brought me to a conference room on the 3rd floor. Agent Kwan sat across from me with a laptop and a thick file folder. We need you to tell us everything you remember about the Kellerman case, she said. Every detail. Every person you interacted with. Every document you filed. So I talked. For 3 hours, I went through the entire case from the beginning. How Marcus had first been placed with the Dawsons. How I'd done my usual home visits and seen nothing suspicious. How Marcus had run away and told his story to police. How I'd immediately reported everything to my supervisor. Your supervisor, Agent Kwan said, making a note. Linda Voss? Yes. Did she ever seem reluctant to pursue the investigation? I thought back. Actually, yes. When I first reported Marcus's allegations, she told me to wait before filing official paperwork. She said we needed to gather more evidence first. But I filed the report anyway. Agent Kwan and another agent exchanged glances. What? I asked. Linda Voss is one of 17 people we've identified as part of the network. She was paid to delay or suppress reports about the Dawsons and other families involved in the operation, my supervisor. The woman I'd worked with for 4 years. The woman who'd trained me when I first started. She was part of it. Who else? I whispered. Agent Kwan opened the file. So far, we've identified 6 social workers, 4 family court judges, 2 police officers, and 5 foster care administrators. The network operated across Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. They've been placing vulnerable children with traffickers for at least 8 years. I felt sick. How many children? We're still determining that. But at least 60 that we know of. 60 children. 60 kids who should have been protected by the system. By people like me. Marcus was the first one to get away and tell someone who actually listened, Agent Kwan continued. You were the first social worker who reported it instead of looking the other way. That's why you're in danger, Miss Torres. You broke the chain. Subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because what happened next changed everything. Over the next 2 days, I stayed in the FBI's protective custody facility, basically a secure apartment building where witnesses lived while cases were being built. I had my own small apartment with a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchenette. 2 agents were always stationed outside my door. Agent Kwan visited every day to update me on the case. The 2 men from the train, Daniel Cortez and Robert Wade, were former military contractors hired by the network to eliminate threats. They'd been paid $50,000 to kill me and make it look like an accident. The device under my seat had been a small thermite charge designed to create intense heat in a concentrated area. It would have incinerated me and my seat, then caused a secondary fire that would destroy evidence. Investigators would have concluded it was an electrical malfunction. I would have been dead before the train reached Connecticut. Marshall Brennan saved your life, Agent Kwan told me. He'd been tracking Cortez and Wade since they purchased train tickets online. He knew they were targeting someone on that route, but we didn't know who until we cross-referenced passenger manifests with people connected to the Kellerman case. What about the other passengers he moved? I asked. Precaution. We couldn't risk collateral damage if Cortez and Wade decided to act while we were trying to apprehend them. Everyone who was moved has been interviewed and debriefed. On the 3rd day, Agent Kwan brought someone new to meet me. A teenage boy with dark hair and wary eyes. Marcus Kellerman. I wanted you to meet the person who actually believed me, Agent Kwan said gently. Marcus sat down across from me. He looked older than 14, like he'd seen things no child should see. Hi, Marcus, I said softly. Hi, Miss Torres. You can call me Emma. He nodded. Agent Kwan said you almost died. Because of me. No, I said firmly. Not because of you. Because of people who did terrible things and didn't want to get caught. You were brave. You told the truth. I was scared. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you're terrified. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Are they going to arrest everyone? All the people who were part of it? That's what the FBI is working on. Good. His voice was hard. They deserve it. Agent Kwan walked Marcus out a few minutes later, but before he left, he turned back to me. Thank you, he said. For listening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus and the 60 other children who'd been failed by the system. By adults who were supposed to protect them. I thought about Linda Voss and how I'd trusted her. Worked beside her. Never suspected anything. And I thought about Thomas Brennan, the U.S. Marshal disguised as a train conductor, who'd seen danger before I did and saved my life. The next morning, Agent Kwan came to my apartment with news. We're making arrests today. 17 people across 3 states. Linda Voss, Judge Patricia Morrison, Detective Kevin Hughes, and 14 others. It's happening simultaneously at 10 a.m. I looked at the clock, 9:47 a.m. Will I have to testify? Eventually, yes. But with this many defendants and this much evidence, most of them will take plea deals. Your testimony will be crucial for the ones who don't. At exactly 10 a.m., Agent Kwan's phone buzzed. She read the message and smiled. All 17 in custody. No incidents. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. 2 weeks later, I was cleared to go home. The FBI determined that with the leadership of the network in custody and facing overwhelming evidence, I was no longer in immediate danger. But they assigned me a security detail, 2 agents who would monitor my apartment and accompany me to work until the trials were complete. Marshal Brennan came to see me the day before I left protective custody. How are you holding up? He asked. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. I keep thinking about how close I came. If you hadn't been on that train. But I was, he said simply. That's what we do. We see the threats before they happen. We protect people who are doing the right thing. Why were you working undercover as a conductor? We'd received intelligence that the network was using transit systems to move targets. Train routes are predictable. Remote sections where things can happen without witnesses. We've been monitoring Northeast regional routes for 3 weeks. And you just happened to be on my train. Not happened. I specifically requested that route when we flagged your travel. I wasn't going to let anything happen to you. I felt tears welling up. You don't even know me. I know you did your job when it would have been easier to look the other way. I know a 14-year-old kid is alive and safe because you listened to him. That's all I need to know. Marshal Brennan stood to leave, but I stopped him. My father was a cop, I said. He died in the line of duty when I was 9. He always told me that the job wasn't about being a hero. It was about showing up. Doing what needed to be done. Thomas nodded. Your father was right. He would have liked you. Thomas smiled. I would have liked him too. 3 months later, I stood in federal court and testified against Linda Voss and 6 other defendants who refused plea deals. I told the truth about what I'd witnessed, what I'd reported, and how they tried to silence me. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty on all counts. Linda Voss was sentenced to 15 years. Judge Patricia Morrison got 20. The others received sentences ranging from 8 to 18 years. Daniel Cortez and Robert Wade, the men who planned to kill me on the train, each got 30 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. The network was destroyed. But the work wasn't done. The FBI recovered files that identified 73 children who been placed with families involved in the trafficking operation. Some, like Marcus, had gotten away. Others had never been found. I made it my mission to find every single one of them. I left my old job and took a position with a federal task force dedicated to investigating corruption in foster care systems. I work with FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and child welfare experts to identify patterns of abuse and trafficking. I use the same skills I used to file case reports, paying attention to details, noticing patterns, trusting my instincts when something feels wrong. Marshal Brennan still checks in on me every few weeks. He calls it professional follow-up, but I know the truth. He cares. Just like my father cared. Marcus Kellerman is 17 now. He's living with a real foster family, people who were thoroughly vetted and who genuinely love him. He's thinking about studying criminal justice in college. He wants to help other kids like him. Last week, he sent me a text, because of you, I got a second chance. Thank you. If this story moved you, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Looking back, I realize how many small moments had to align perfectly for me to survive that day. If Marshal Brennan hadn't been undercover on that train. If he hadn't flagged my name in the system. If I hadn't trusted him when he told me to move. Any one of those moments could have gone differently. But the biggest lesson I learned wasn't about luck or timing. It was about doing what's right, even when it's dangerous. When Marcus Kellerman told me his story, I could have ignored it. I could have listened to Linda Voss and waited for more evidence. I could have protected myself by staying silent. But I didn't. I filed the report. I told the truth. And yes, it nearly cost me my life. But it saved Marcus. And it saved dozens of other children who would have been hurt by that network. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust that small voice that says, something is wrong here. Because I'm just a social worker. I don't carry a gun or wear a badge. I don't have special training in self-defense. But I listened when a child told me he was being hurt. And I acted when someone tried to silence me. That's all it took to bring down an entire criminal network. My name is Emma Torres. I'm 31 years old. I'm a social worker who exposed a child trafficking conspiracy. And I'm alive because a train conductor moved me to first class and told me my life depended on it. Trust your instincts. Listen when someone warns you. And never, ever ignore a child who's asking for help. Because sometimes, doing the right thing is the only thing that matters. Even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying.